Hello everybody, this is Vlad, your friendly neighborhood dragon, and today we are going to be taking a look at administrative ideas in Europa Universalis 4. As the title of the video suggests, this will be a mathematical look, where we actually look at the equations that determine the game mechanics of EU4 and see exactly how much these ideas affect those equations. Unlike a lot of videos floating around on the internet, this is meant to be a more objective view of the ideas based on the raw numbers and based upon plausible scenarios in the game. Because everybody has a different playstyle, people are going to find different idea groups more or less useful to what they hope to accomplish in the game. However, the goal of this video is that whatever idea groups you end up choosing, it will be an informed choice. You will know what you are getting. I will offer my own thoughts based upon what I think are the best ideas, but that is predicated upon my playstyle and will not apply it to everybody. Having said that, let's dive into these ideas and what exactly they do. So, starting off, we have organized mercenary payments, which is negative 25% mercenary cost. You might look at this idea and think it's awesome. You might think to yourself, oh my god, I spend so much money on mercenaries. If I can cut out a quarter of that cost, that's amazing. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. This idea is a lot worse than it looks. It's still somewhat useful, but in the grand scheme of things, it is weaker than a lot of the better economic ideas. In fact, for every one of the ideas in this group that involve money, I'm going to compare it to bureaucracy, which is a plus 10% national tax modifier. This is kind of just like a generic economy modifier. And for most of the game, my problem with a lot of administrative ideas is that none of these ideas are going to save you as much money as an economic idea like bureaucracy would earn you money. So I'll get to I'll get to that point later, but first off, let's look at exactly what this idea does. So, if we look at the Army wiki page for Europa Universalis 4, and let's go here to mercenary recruitment costs. This is actually the only formula in which that negative 25% mercenary cost applies under the sigma mercenary cost modifiers. So essentially, the cost of recruiting a mercenary is the base regiment cost times 150% for being a mercenary, and then they tack on an extra percentage point for every mercenary that you already have. So for instance, if you already have 50 mercenaries, your 51st regiment is going to cost 200% total. 100 plus 50 plus the 50 mercenaries you already have times your base. That is, so this idea is in fact the only idea in the entire game, even including national ideas, that actually reduces this mercenary cost modifier. However, it doesn't affect the upkeep of your mercenaries, and it does not affect the reinforcement costs of your mercenaries. It only affects the cost when you first recruit them. And it doesn't even affect it by 25% effectively, because you start out at 150% and it takes you down to 125%. That is actually a 17% decrease, not a 25% decrease. So how much are you really saving if you're saving 17% on just the recruitment costs of mercenaries? Well, let me give you an idea. So, the Ottoman Empire starts with approximately 100 tax income per year. That means that if you took bureaucracy, that would give you about 10 ducats per year as the Ottomans at the very beginning of the game. That would be the equivalent of hiring 4 mercenaries every single year. So you need to hire 4 mercenaries every single year to have the same economic impact as a plus 10% tax modifier. Might not sound like a lot, but that's quite a few mercenaries. If you're recruiting 4 mercenaries a year, assuming that you're using them, you are incurring horrendous costs. So, unless you are, burning through your treasury by hiring mercenaries, which is probably unsustainable, this is going to be a less impactful bonus than just the plus 10 to taxes. You'd be better off doing something to earn money rather than to, take this idea to save money. It's not going to save you as much as the tax modifier would earn you, unless you're just getting a ton of mercenaries. But, you know, if you do need mercenaries, that is when you are the most vulnerable. So, a cost there might save you. But overall, this bonus is not going to be that impactful. Ultimately, you might recruit 1,000 mercenaries for the entire game. And spending 400 admin points to get thousands of gold over, hundreds of years, it's decent, but it's not great. So if you're talking about the economic impact of this idea, if you're not using a lot of mercenaries, it's probably about the same as just, increasing the tax of one of your provinces. Like, it's not that great of an investment overall, because it happens over such a long time. So yeah, I mean, this is somewhat useful, but, just the math shows that it's probably not going to be as good as bureaucracy unless you are just getting a ton of mercenaries. The next idea, though, adaptability, this is the reason for the season. This is ultimately the reason why most people take administrative ideas. That's because 25% coin cost, or coin creation cost, is an insane bonus. So let's get an idea of how big this bonus can be. The world starts off with 17,000 development, so by the end of the game, you're usually talking about maybe 20,000 development from nations developing their provinces. So without bonuses, it would take 200,000 admin points to core the entire world. Considering that you're only going to get somewhere around like 50,000 admin points, best case scenario, the entire game, of course that's unsustainable. But if you are coring the entire world, if you have enough bonuses to be able to do so, this policy is responsible for 50,000 administrative points in savings, which is probably more than, like I said, probably more than you'll get the entire game. So that is potentially an insane bonus. This idea has potential to be an order of magnitude more impactful than any other idea in the entire game. Really. So yeah, that's really something to consider. So this bonus is so impactful that the question becomes not when do you take this idea, it becomes, well, when do you not take this idea? And the answer is, if you're doing a lot of coring, you will chronically find yourself short on admin points unless you have this idea. Even if you are the Ottomans or the Mughals, coring is freaking expensive. And you really need a bonus to it, a bonus to the cost if you're doing a lot of it. So if you're not taking this idea, that means that that you either aren't taking a lot of admin groups, you're not using a lot of admin points, or you're not doing a lot of coring relative to what you could be doing if you took this. So yeah, even if you only conquer a tenth of the world and core half of it, this is still saving you thousands of admin points. This is still paying for the entire group. So yeah, adaptability is super, super good. You need to justify why you don't get it. Essentially, it's probably the most powerful idea in the game. Anyways, enough gushing about that. Move on. Benefits for mercenaries. Negative 25% mercenary maintenance. This is actually another case of paradox math. It's at least labeled correctly. This actually will be a reduction in mercenary maintenance, but it actually comes out to an effective 10% decrease in mercenary maintenance. The reason is, if you look at the equation, mercenary maintenance is 1/50th of the of the base regiment cost. However, it's multiplied by regiment cost modifiers and the upkeep modifiers. So ironically, like even though it says mercenary maintenance cost, this 25% reduction in mercenary cost does nothing to it. Only this does. But still, it's not modifying. It's not going down from 100% though. It's going down from 250% base. That means that your maintenance is going from 2.5 times that of a regular regimen down to 2.25 times that of a regular regimen. That's only a 10% effective decrease in maintenance. In fact, it is the same decrease to if you took quantity ideas and did enforced service, because regiment cost modifiers, both to specific kinds of units, like the Ottomans get with cavalry, or to just every kind of regiment, actually affect all kinds of maintenance costs. So this idea is actually strictly worse than enforced service, because it gives the exact same percentage in maintenance reduction, but it only affects mercenaries. So yeah, compared to like a military idea, it's actually it pales in comparison, except for mercenaries. But even so, how much money is this really saving you? To go back to the example talking about bureaucracy, 10% national tax modifier, Ottomans 100 tax a game at the beginning of the year. So if benefits for mercenaries is saving you 10 gold per year, that means that you have around like 18 mercenaries. So yeah, so for this to be more impactful than that 10% national tax modifier, you need to have a substantial amount of mercenaries. So this makes it less painful to pay for something that's already very, very painful to pay for. So yeah, so this bonus will only be as impactful as bureaucracy, that tax modifier, if you have essentially an unsustainable amount of mercenaries, which is why I think it's worse, because I don't think you can keep up with always having this many mercenaries, compared to your total income. So yeah, over the course of the game, this will probably save you a couple thousand gold if you're using a lot of mercenaries. But again, this is actually a lot worse than it looks, because it's only negative 10% maintenance just to mercenaries. All right, finally, not finally, we're moving on to the next one. We have bookkeeping, which is -1 interest per annum. Unless you look under the hood of the game, it's really hard to see what that means. So by default, loans in Europa, they're not based on your yearly income, but the way that the math works, it comes out to about the same as your yearly income. And there is a 4% interest per year charge applied to each loan. That means that if you take a loan for 1,000 ducats, you'll have to pay 1,200 gold 5 years from now, because 5 times 4 is 20%. This reduces the yearly interest from 4% down to 3%, which means that you only pay 15% interest. Instead of that 1,000 gold loan costing you 200 ducats, it only costs you 150 ducats to advance that loan. Now, the problem, though, is that you need to be taking a lot of loans for this to be saving you as much money as bureaucracy. So just to kind of stay with the same base on that 10% national tax modifier, you would have to be taking one loan per year for this to be as impactful as as bureaucracy, and that's quite a few loans. The reason loans are bad in Europa are the same reason why loans are bad in real life. You take loans when you are short on money, but they cost you money. Which is why, once you get into debt, it's kind of hard to get out of debt because your debts kind of multiply. Same is true in um, Europa as well. Like when you take out a loan, you have to figure out how to pay that loan later. You need to have an extreme reduction in costs at some point in the future if you are taking loans. So, so just as in real life, we only take loans when we really need them, or when we think that we can invest something into the world that's greater than the loan. We use loans to pay for cars and houses because they're necessities of life, and then we might take out loans to start a business or to get a college degree because we think that we can invest into ourselves more than the value of that loan. So in Europa, it is hard to consistently make 4% or even 3% annual investments. It's hard, for example, to take out a loan and then build a bunch of buildings and have those buildings give you money faster than the interest. So, in general, for most nations, my rule of thumb is, well, at least when I play it, I only like to take loans to win wars. When I know that that loan is going to have a huge impact, and I don't mind, and that loan will get me so much that the fact that I need to really ramp down my costs in the near future doesn't bother me. Like, I need an incredible result right now, like winning a war, in order to justify getting a loan. Otherwise, I will look to change other resources into gold to solve the underlying issue, which is the gold shortage. So bookkeeping doesn't really solve any problems for you. All it does is just, it makes your financial problems less severe. So like I said, for this to be very impactful, you need to be taking a lot of loans. And if you're taking a lot of loans, you're probably not, I mean, it's not for me to judge, but it just seems like you're not playing that efficiently because you're short on money, but then you're costing yourself more money, which means your day of reckoning is coming. There's one exception to this, though, and that is certain nations are able to stack interest per annum ideas. So let's say, you're administrative and economic, and you are Catholic, so you can forgive usury, and then you have a national idea which reduces inflation, or interest per annum. You can get down to a maximum floor of 0.25 interest per annum. That means that loan that with no bonuses cost you 200 ducats for every 1,000 ducats now only costs you 12 and a half ducats for every 1,000 ducats. And that is an amount of money that you can invest. You could take out if you have interest that low, you can take out a whole bunch of loans. You can build temples in your crappiest provinces, and it will still pay for itself. Those buildings will still pay for themselves faster than the interest ramps up on you. Once you reduce your interest to virtually nothing, you can just invest money so easily. You can build buildings from loans. You can lend money to other nations and have them pay back with interest and be like the banker of Europe and just get like a whole bunch of money. You can do silly things if you just stack interest per annum benefits. But you're selling out a lot to be able to do that. Like your empire is you're gonna have some severe deficiencies in your empire if you do that, but at the same time you have one power that's just kind of silly. So yeah, situational marginal bonus. That's what I feel about bookkeeping, unless you're selling out for interest per annum, and then you're just doing silly things with your empire. Yeah, that's my thoughts on this. Anyways, next idea in this group is the final one that affects mercenaries, which is mercenary recruitment, plus 25% available mercenaries. This is actually, shockingly, an accurate description of what's going on here. So, if we look at the wiki, we see our mercenary support limit. So the mercenary support limit for a nation is 20 plus 30% of its land force limit, and then it's multiplied by your available mercenaries. So, I think at the beginning of the game, Venice has something like a force limit of 20. So at the beginning of the game, Venice would have 20, and then you would take 30% of their force limit, 6. So they'd have about 26. They could recruit 26 mercenaries at any given time. If Venice takes this idea early in the game, that goes up to 33 mercenaries, I believe. They get 6 or 7 more. Now, if you're a small country like Venice, even if you have a good trade income, that number of mercenaries is going to absolutely cripple your economy. That is just not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. Even for a big nation, to go to your mercenary support limit is an unsustainable state of affairs. However, if you need to win a war against somebody who is more powerful than you, or just a giant coalition, recruiting a lot of mercenaries, even selling out, even going over your force limit and taking out a bunch of loans to win that first battle, it could be worth it. So, because this doesn't really give you any concrete bonuses, this is more just like, in your hour of need, you can scrape a little bit deeper to get more soldiers. Like when you're out of manpower and you've just gotten your ass kicked, or if you're just trying to build up like a huge force at once. Yeah, so this is an interesting idea. Probably not as impactful as anything else so far, but it's still interesting because this allows you to, if you start small, to win against countries that are larger than you. This allows you to temporarily punch above your weight class at a horrendous financial cost to yourself. So if you're a risky player, you might make some use of this. Otherwise, you might hardly notice it. This one is really, really hard to quantify. I'm really not sure how good this idea is, but I suspect that it's not as good as what we've seen so far. I suspect that there are usually more efficient ways to play than to scrape the bottom of the mercenary barrel, so to speak. Like if you think about late in the game, if you're the Ottomans, so I keep mentioning them, or anybody, and you have a force limit of 100, you're a relatively medium-sized country later on in the game, you have a force limit of 100. That means that you would have a mercenary limit of 50, and this would raise it to 63. But again, that is quite a few mercenaries. That is a lot of mercenaries. And I just don't know when you should be in that position. So anyways, if anyone's made a good use of this idea or have stories about when this has saved them, how this idea has saved you, I'd love to hear about it. But personally, I just don't see this idea being all that great, except for just the early game example of trying to pounce on a bigger enemy. Okay. Next we have administrative efficiency. Now, this might not look like it, but this idea essentially comes down to being a very, very minor gold bonus. And let me explain why. So, when you recruit an advisor, you get 3 advisors, and they're going to be from a pool of 7 for each category. For each either admin, diplo, or military point. And depending on how rich your nation is, they're going to be either +1, +2, or +3 advisors, and they're going to cost a base of 1, 4, or 9, and that will raise up to 2.88 times by the end of the game. So essentially, if you have 3 level 3 advisors, at the end of the game with no bonuses, it's going to cost you 75 per turn. Not per turn, per month. Around that amount. So anyways, what this idea does is this makes it so that instead of 3 advisors at once, you have 4 advisors at once. So it makes it more likely that you get the advisor that you want. Now, typically advisor choice. Now, my problem with this is that if you have the Cosmos DLC, you can always get a Inquisitor, a Theologian, or a Diplomat, which are some of the best ones. So you can always get a very, very useful advisor. And it's relatively rare that you absolutely need a certain kind of advisor. Like, usually, morale versus discipline is kind of a toss-up. And even things like land maintenance versus national manpower, it's like they're relatively equal um, bonuses. Like, I mean, it's not like any of these advisors are like so much greater than the other. But even if you are constantly replacing advisors, even if you are always searching for your perfect advisor, this idea will make it so that every time you're looking for an advisor, you will have to replace advisors one time less, because you can always replace advisors, fire them, and get new ones. So, if we do the math here, let's say you're replacing an advisor once every 10 years. 10 years. We'll just say that maybe this idea here will save you 30 gold once every 10 years when you are replacing an advisor. By the end of the game, that's, like 400 gold. Like, no, it's not 400 gold, sorry, that's like 1200, wait, sorry, like 375 years, so that's going to be 38 advisors. Yeah, so you're, okay, sorry, 1,000 gold. Even if you are replacing an advisor every 10 years and looking for the perfect advisor, this will save you 1,000 gold. So, 400 admin points for 1,000 gold over the course of a game isn't that great of a trade. So this idea group is a very, very small gold bonus. When you talk about like if you should take this idea group or not, this idea is irrelevant. It's tiny compared to everything else. It's negligible. So yeah, let's just move on from that. It's not a very good idea. Okay, finally, the last idea you can take in this group is civil service, which is -10 administrative tech cost. Like a lot of the other bonuses, this is not a multiplicative bonus. This is, in fact, an additive bonus. So if you look at technology in EU4, you have a base cost of technology, which is 600, and that's going to be modified by like neighbor bonuses or ahead of time bonuses or ahead of time bonuses or institution bonuses or penalties. That means that no matter how much tech costs are, this idea is saving you 60 every time you get a technology. So even if you take this as early as you possibly can, which is tech level 5, and you have 27 technologies using this idea, that's 1,600 admin points that you're saving. So your even best case scenario, you're only getting 1,600 admin points out of this. It's not a great bonus. Better than nothing? Pretty good. Like, free admin points are always fun, but it's just not very many. Especially if you take this in the middle of the game, it's going to be only like 800 or 1,000 admin points. So, yeah. One of the main selling points of admin ideas is that it saves you admin points, but that actually comes from adaptability, not from civil service. And finally, if you take all of these ideas, you get a bonus just +5 number of states. I think this is a relatively useless bonus because for two reasons. One is turning conquered land into a territory is essential to avoid overextension. You have to core at least up to the territory level just to keep your empire together. Coring states is optional, and if you do it, it is a way of exchanging admin points for gold and manpower. It can be useful, but it's really a luxury. It's something you can do if you happen to have extra admin points, which if you're doing a lot of conquering and coring, you oftentimes do not. So this bonus doesn't directly give you anything. It gives you the option of turning more of your admin points into more gold and manpower. But the problem, though, is that states are most beneficial in rich provinces. And if you are turning territories into states, you're probably doing it in areas that are already pretty wealthy. So by the time you've gone through all of your available states and this bonus is helping you, you're probably going to be turning pretty bad provinces into states. So having 5 kind of average states is probably only worth 3 ducats per month and a couple thousand manpower. And that doesn't scale with your empire size. I mean, that can be good if you're a relatively small empire, but at the end of the game, that's kind of irrelevant. So yeah, this is not a great bonus. You are probably not going to be expanding like mad to even use this bonus, but even if you do use it, it's going to be 5 of probably your worst states that you're able to make out of this. So, not a great bonus. Okay, so having gone through all of the ideas and tried to kind of give you a mathematical idea of how powerful each of them are, when do you take this idea group? What is the strategy behind it? And and this idea group ultimately overall saves you gold and admin points, but really a lot more admin points. If you're looking to save gold, you should probably look somewhere else. The gold bonuses for mercenaries are only powerful if you are just using a lot of mercenaries, and even so, they're not as powerful as economic ideas. So you use this idea group primarily if you want to save admin points because you expect to be doing a lot of coring. And that negative 25 core creation cost is so powerful that if you are not taking this idea group, you either are not taking other admin ideas so you have more admin points to spare, you're not doing a whole bunch of coring, or you already have bonuses to coring, like the Ottomans or the Mughals. But even if you have those bonuses, this is still a great idea group to take. If you're the Ottomans, you have negative 33 coring costs. Getting down to negative 57% is huge. You can core over twice as much land as anybody else. That's great. So yeah, either you're not expanding or you're expanding primarily through vassal feeding. Otherwise, this idea group is pretty much a must-have. Yeah, just because of adaptability. Now, one strategy that you can do is, if you don't care about mercenary bonuses, or you're just short on admin points, it is very, very viable to just take the first 2 ideas. And even later on in the game, when you have other coring cost reductions, you might even be able to max out on coring cost reductions without adaptability, in which case you could cancel the whole group and do something else. But, yeah, so this is one idea group where you can only where it's perfectly okay just to get the first 2 ideas, and you're pretty much set. You already have the best of this group. Because if you go for the last 5 ideas, benefits from mercenaries to civil service, that costs you 2,000 admin points, but it only saves you at most 1,600. So if you're looking solely to save admin points, the first 2 ideas are everything you need. So that's one way. However, even though these last 5 bonuses aren't that great, finishing the idea group can still be good, useful, because of the policies that go with it. If you look at the policies that go with administrative, there are a couple of really good ones. If you go admin aristocratic, you can get plus 20% relations improve, and negative 10% aggressive expansion. You can spend military points to get a diplomatic, to get a diplomatic bonus. That's huge. You usually have too many military points to use anyways. So to be able to get less aggressive expansion at the cost of mil points is awesome. And so yeah, aristocratic combined with administrative is really good for that policy. Another excellent policy that goes with administrative is if you go influence, because even if you are primarily doing a vassal feeding, you might, instead of being hamstrung by admin points, you'll be hamstrung by diplo points. So this policy, admin influence, allows you to essentially trade admin points for diplo points. Give up admin points to make diplo annexing cheaper. That can be very, very useful. So even if you can finish administrative, and even if you're not coring almost at all, it can still be useful in saving you monarch points if if vassal annexing is very important to you. So yeah, it's two very good policies for that. But yeah, overall, one of the best idea groups in the game, even if you only take the first two ideas, just because it saves you a lot of admin points. That went on for a lot longer than I expected, but I hope to provide more mathematically exhaustive videos to give people a better idea of which idea groups to pick. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to have another one of these discussions very soon. Bye.